When you picture an educational game, you probably aren't thinking of something like this. This is Kyoto Seinen Monogatari, also known as the Cosmology of Kyoto, a point-and-click educational game set in Japan's Heian period, a period shaped by superstition and myth. The game presents a collection of stories drawn from across 1,000 years, fragments of history, folklore, and Buddhist cosmology, carefully woven together within the ancient city of Heian-kyō, now Kyoto. As we move through this strange land, we will learn of its customs, encounter all manner of absurdities, and bear witness to the cruelties of the time, both on the surface and in the realms beyond.
Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu.
After creating our character, we awaken in a cornfield just outside the capital. But before we begin our journey, it's worth first getting our bearings. The game's UI may look confusing, but it's actually quite simple. The largest box is the viewport, where the game's visuals are rendered. The box directly below it is for dialogue and interaction, and the box below that displays your inventory. The two yellow squares in the bottom left and right hand corners show your karma score and number of coins respectively. The kanji above the viewport represents the cardinal directions, and clicking on it brings up the map of the city. Lastly is the reference button in the top left corner. Clicking on it brings up the in-game encyclopedia, with entries relevant to what's happening on screen. This is extremely important, as without referring to this compendium, we will have almost no idea of what's going on. On the ground lies a small handheld mirror. Picking it up and looking at it, we realize that we are completely naked, which may be problematic if we are to enter the city. Luckily, there's a corpse nearby, from which we can acquire some clothes, along with the hefty pouch of coins. With us in this field is a strange demon, which taunts us by rapidly popping in and out the foliage. It appears rather harmless, and eventually leaves behind an amulet before scurrying away. Moving through the cornfield, the path to the city opens. We stand before the Rajomon Gate, the entrance to Heian-kyō. An ominous voice tells us to go back, but we do not pay heed to the warning. To the right of the gate stands a large figure, clad in thick armor and brandishing a katana, a samurai. He too urges us to leave, but then notices the amulet we picked up in the field. He says that it belongs to him, a symbol of his role, a destroyer of demons. We return the amulet, and he introduces himself as Watanabe no Suna, a servant of Minamoto no Yorimitsu. Watanabe no Suna was a legendary warrior of the Heian period and loyal retainer of Minamoto no Yorimitsu, counted among his elite 4 heavenly kings. Minamoto no Yorimitsu, also known as Raiko, stands among the most famous demon-slaying heroes in Japanese folklore. But even in history, his name holds weight, serving as a prominent military leader under Fujiwara no Michinaga, the most influential aristocrat of the time. Suna says that the amulet was stolen from him by a Tsukumogami, an inanimate object come to life in the form of a demon, likely that creature we encountered earlier. Our conversation is then interrupted when Suna notices something. He asks if we feel something strange, and we reply yes. A demon then emerges from the shadows, but promptly retreats after being wounded by Suna. Concerned for our safety now that the city has become infested by demons, Suna hands us a blade known as Higekiri, the beard cutter, a treasured heirloom of the Minamoto clan, named after it cut so cleanly through a criminal's neck that even his beard was severed. He then bids us farewell, but this will not be our last encounter. Now armed with a weapon, we pass through the Rajumon Gate and enter the city of Heian-kyō. We are now free to explore the capital as we see fit. There is no set path or any one intended route. Each encounter in the city, with a few exceptions, is a self-contained narrative, so we can approach them in any order. Surveying our surroundings, we immediately take note of the decay. The streets are lined with beggars, struck by both famine and disease. Without an effective waste disposal system, garbage, human waste, and even dead bodies were simply dumped onto the streets, resulting in the outbreak of many illnesses. This, combined with the shortage of food and high taxes, created a nearly inescapable cycle of poverty for the common folk, while the aristocrats lived in luxury and comfort. Many gave in to the despair, others turned to banditry to survive. The outskirts of the city quickly became overrun with crime, resulting in the formation of the Keibi-ishi, an early form of law enforcement. Their methods were brutal, and often acted as judge, jury, and executioner, but by the 10th century, even this wasn't enough to keep the streets free of crime. Approaching a group of beggars near the entrance to the city, we listen to some of their woes. A man with an incurable disease questions what he did to deserve this fate, and why those who abandoned him have not received their own punishment. The man next to him remarks how normalized all this has become. People die in droves and no one bats an eye. It must be their karma, one of them says. A recurring theme you will notice among the residents of Heian-kyō is the referencing of Buddhist principles. During the Heian period, Buddhism was by far the most dominant religion in Japan, and for many it was the framework they used to make sense of the world. Beliefs, however, varied greatly, and were often blended with folklore, local ideas, and even other systems like Shinto and Myodo. The game does an excellent job of showcasing this amalgamation of ideas, as you will soon see. An emaciated woman holding a child warns us that the city is haunted, and in exchange for a few coins, the old beggar next to her advises that we seek out a priest named Nichizo. Perhaps he will give you a wonderful teaching, the man says. We are unfamiliar with this person, but keep his name in mind for the future. An old woman kneeling in front of a statue repeatedly chants the phrase, Namu Amida Butsu. This is known as the Nembutsu and translates to, I take refuge in the Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha is the central figure in Pure Land Buddhism. He was originally a monk who sought to create a realm where anyone could attain enlightenment, no matter how flawed they may be. After achieving Buddhahood and creating this pure land, he then made a vow that if anyone sincerely calls upon him, he will ensure that they are reborn there. This is the function of the Nembutsu. The woman identifies the statue in front of her as an idol of Jizo, a beloved figure in Japanese Buddhism. Despite being on the path to enlightenment, Jizo made a vow that he will not attain Buddhahood until all beings in hell are freed. He now remains in our world as a guardian of those trapped in suffering. The old woman assures us that Jizo will help us too when the time is right. A lone table holding some carefully placed items blocks the path before us. Approaching it, a man dressed in black robes warns us not to touch it. He says he's casting a yin-yang spell to keep demons away, and that if we value our life, we should leave immediately. This person is Kamo no Tadayuki, a notable 10th century yin-yang master whose lineage mentored the legendary Abe no Seimei. Yin-yang divination, known as Onmyodo in Japan, is a set of beliefs and practices rooted in the 5 elements and the principles of yin and yang. Originating in China, this philosophy made its way to Japan around the 6th century and played a particularly dominant role during the Heian period, to the point where its practitioners were appointed as part of the imperial government. Tadayuki was one such practitioner and seems to be adamant that we leave. But curiosity gets the better of us, and we steal a glimpse of what lies on the path ahead. A demon. We immediately unsheath our sword and try to defend ourselves, but it's of little use. Unlike Watanabe no Suna, we are not a samurai. We don't have the strength or skill to best a demon with a mere blade. We are killed, but death in this game is not the end. Based on the actions we took leading up to our death, we receive a karma score, which determines where in the 6 realms of existence we are reborn. In Buddhism, the 6 realms refer to the different planes of existence within samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. At the very top is Deva, the realm of the gods, and at the bottom is Naraka, hell. While there is a definitive order to the realms, higher does not always mean better. It simply means less suffering. Now you might be wondering how less suffering could ever be a bad thing. Well, the answer is nicely demonstrated in the 2 realms above humans. Starting with the realm of the gods, a realm for those who led moral lives, but still remained attached to the pleasures of the world. In this realm, our form is elevated. Dressed in lavish attire, we are surrounded by a vast, tranquil landscape. As the highest of the 6 realms, the Deva realm is characterized by near-perfect conditions. A place without suffering, illness, or aging. Desires are fulfilled almost instantly, and one is able to live without any effort. This is precisely the problem. Without suffering, without struggle, there is no need to question one's existence, no desire to seek enlightenment. You get consumed by hedonism and remain trapped in the cycle. This pleasure is also fleeting. Like in every other realm, your stay is temporary, its duration determined by your karma. Some texts even go as far as to say that the grief one experiences upon realizing their time in this realm is ending is worse than the tortures of hell, though this is very much debatable. The second highest realm is the realm of Asuras, the demigods, though in some schools of thought it is considered below humans. The Ashura realm is a realm of power without peace, created for those who attain good karma, but were corrupted by ego and conceit. The beings here possess strength, intelligence, and even divine qualities, but are consumed by jealousy and pride, resulting in endless conflict. The Asuras have waged war against the Devas, envious of their heavenly pleasures and power. In this realm, we take the form of a small, low-ranking Ashura. A larger 3-faced 4-armed Ashura commands us to fight, and we head off for battle. A group of heavenly archers unload a barrage of arrows into our body, forcing us to retreat, but our respite is short-lived, for we then come face to face with the king of the Devas, Indra. With a single motion of his blade, he decapitates us, sending us back to the human realm, which many Buddhists consider to be the best realm, for it is the only one where enlightenment is realistically possible. It's a realm for those with balanced karma. There is enough suffering to inspire you to reflect on your existence, and enough comfort to allow this reflection to take place, as opposed to the other realms which skew one way or the other. Continuing with our journey through Heian-kyō, we pick up the clothing and items of our corpse and proceed onwards. Just to the left of where we died, we discover something horrifying. 4 demons crouch over the skeletal remains of a human, performing some kind of ritual. Flesh begins forming around the bones, and eventually, the eyes of the corpse open. The demons take note of our presence and try to attack, but the Yin-Yang master from earlier steps in, causing them to flee.
たであろう。それがしが参らねば、そちは殺されておったところじゃ。
He says that they were trying to craft a person, but is unwilling to elaborate any further. Recipe for making a person. A secret method reportedly transmitted by the yin-yang masters of the house of Tsuchimikado. Human bones are coated with white arsenic, soaked in the juice of mashed strawberries and chickweed, bound together with wisteria vines or string, and cleansed many times in water. Then they are laid away for 14 days on a freshly made straw mat, after which a special spell is cast. Anyone revealing this dreaded spell risks death. That explains why Tadayuki was so hesitant. A young woman from across the street suddenly approaches us. She asks if we are High Steward Okimi. We answer no, but the woman just interprets this as a jest and urges us to follow her, noting that the lady has been awaiting our arrival. Curious where this may lead, we comply. We are taken to a bright red building, and inside find an elegantly dressed lady. She tells us to come closer and begins undressing. But before we can proceed any further, something emerges from the shadows. A demon. It begins strangling the woman, and there is nothing we can do but watch as life slowly leaves her body. Outside, the elderly woman who was praying to the Jizo statue makes an appearance. She warns us to avoid these types of abandoned buildings in the future, for demons have made them their abode. A haunted pavilion, a story from the Konjaku Monogatari, one of the largest collections of tales from the Heian period. High Steward Okimi has a woman arrange a liaison with a certain court lady, but at the last minute, they find others using the meeting place. At the woman's suggestion, they stay in an empty old pavilion, but in the dead of night, a gruesome woman appears and says that she is the mistress of the premises. Okimi rushes to escape and finds his companion half dead. He manages to take her home, but when he visits the next day, she is dead. To the east of the Rajamon Gate, we meet a man called Nichizo.
私は日蔵と申します。
The priest the old beggar spoke of. Nichizo was a prominent 10th century Buddhist monk who studied Shingon Buddhism at Toji Temple. He is said to have died during intense ascetic training at Mount Kinpu, descending into the realms of the dead for 13 days before returning. His experiences would eventually become a warning of the horrors that lie beyond. Following Nichizo, he leads us to the Toji Temple, one of the two main temples founded by the government of Heian-kyō, containing depictions of many divine beings.
日蔵でございます。開けてくだされ。
In the main hall, we see the healing Buddha with his two attendants, the sunlight and moonlight bodhisattvas. In the lecture hall, we see the three-dimensional mandala, an arrangement of 21 statues based on a sacred sutra. 5 main Buddhas stand in the center. In the east stands 5 bodhisattvas, and in the west 5 fierce kings of light. Brahma and Indra stand as guardian deities on either side, and at the 4 outer corners are the 4 heavenly kings. The sight is overwhelming and makes us see visions of the universe. Thankfully, Nichizo snaps us out of it and asks if we would like to become a priest of esoteric Buddhism. We say yes, and he hands us a scroll for our protection. Reciting the sutra written within the scroll allows us to finally fight back against the demons roaming the city, vanquishing them without a trace. A group of 6 children play a game of Kicho in the street, a Heian-era game typically played around the New Year season, which involves striking a wooden ball with a long-handled mallet. One of the children hits the ball towards us. We hand it back, but the next swing sends it even farther, hitting the carriage of a noble.
無礼者
The noble, deeply annoyed, tells his servant to deal with the situation quickly, and the man begins reaching for his sword.
このたわけ者が
We try to intervene, but are unable to save the boy
えい
or ourselves.
己邪魔立てする気かこしゃくな
Due to the massive power imbalance between the nobles and the commoners during the Heian era, atrocities like this often took place, and for the most part went unpunished. Continuing with our journey through the 6 realms, we now begin our descent into the lower realms, realms defined by ignorance and suffering, starting with the highest of the lower realms, the realm of animals. You may notice that despite a change in chromatic vision, we are still within the city of Heian-kyō, albeit in a different form. This can be a bit confusing if you simply think of the realms as different locations. A more accurate description would be different ways of experiencing reality, which does often include a change in location. For animals, however, the focus is on the altered mental state and lack of self-awareness. Your life here is completely governed by instinct, and every day is a fight for survival, a punishment for those who lived a life of ignorance. The beggars we once conversed with and gave money now shoo us away. Our hunger draws us towards a decaying corpse, but as we begin feeding, a large aggressive-looking dog slowly approaches, saliva dripping from its mouth. We are devoured and sent to the realm of hungry ghosts, the second lowest realm of existence, just above Naraka. A realm for those who led a life of intense greed and obsession. They will now be forced to suffer endless craving without satisfaction. Those who were jailers and cheated prisoners of food become hungry ghosts who eat nothing but the flames from the cremation of corpses and can never get enough. Some give birth each day and each night to 5 children, whom they promptly eat, but they are always hungry. Some split open their own heads and eat their brains, while others spew fire from their mouths to attract moths, and others find their food only in water left over from cleaning up dung and urine. Some hungry ghosts are always dying of thirst, but whenever they come across a river and hurry toward it, nasty demons beat them with clubs, and the river turns to fire and dries up. Other hungry ghosts have mouths as tiny as the eye of a needle, and stomachs as big as mountains, so even if they find food, they can never have their full. Others can eat what food they find, but it turns to fire, cooks their bodies, and spews back out. There are many other entries just like this, describing in detail the punishments that await you in this realm, but I think you get the picture. We ourselves have ripped out our own brain in an attempt to consume it, but before we can get our full, we are surrounded by several other hungry ghosts and devoured. We now make our way to the Eastern Market, one of the 2 main markets established when Heian-kyō was founded. Outside the entrance sits another group of beggars.
No.
After giving him some money, the bald-headed beggar vents his frustration about someone called Madam Moneylender. He wishes that someone would just kill her, remarking how the world would be better off without her. The Eastern Market was said to have sold 51 different types of goods, including a variety of medicines, food, clothing, and even armaments. One particular weapon catches our eye, a bow. Its long range may prove useful in the future, but unfortunately, we don't have enough money after all our charity. It's 5 coins for the bow, plus another 5 for arrows. The only 2 ways of acquiring money in the Eastern Market are through gambling or Madam Moneylender. A gigantic woman sits in front of us, resting her arms on the shoulders of her 2 underlings. Despite sitting down, the woman appears out of breath. She agrees to lend us some money, but wants something to keep as insurance. The only 2 items of worth we have on us are the Beard Cutter Sword and the Sutra for banishing demons, and we don't want to give up either. We're better off trying our luck at the cockpits, though not before giving the madam a fright on behalf of the bald beggar. The Fat Moneylender. One part of the Book of Sicknesses describes a woman who became rich as a moneylender in the Shichijo neighborhood of Heian-kyō, near the eastern and western markets. She grew extremely fat as a result of her obsession with eating delicacies and had great difficulty moving about. She is pictured using crutches and sweating profusely. The premise of cockfighting is simple. Two trained roosters are paired against each other in a battle to the death. You place a bet on the one you think will win, and then anxiously await the outcome.
勝負 おめでとうさん。さ、倍返しや。
It seems that luck was on our side.
毎度あり。
With the bow now in our possession, we check out some of the other stalls in the market. Two women eagerly call out to us to try some of their food.
寿司あゆよう使った寿司あゆ油が乗ってうまいぞ
The woman on the left sells dried fish, and the one on the right sushi ayu, a mixture of fermented rice and fish. We decide to go for the sushi ayu. It tastes far more sour than we expected, perhaps because of the fermentation.
ああ木に
A basket of sushi ayu. A peddler woman gets drunk and falls asleep near the gate of a house. When she wakes up, she accidentally vomits in a basket of sushi ayu. The woman is very upset, but then simply mixes the vomit into the food. Since sushi ayu looks rather like vomit, the customers didn't notice. But those who discover what she has done lose their taste for sushi ayu. The story goes.
Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu.
Further into the market, we once again hear the Nembutsu being chanted. It seems to be originating from a man surrounded by a large group of people.
このお方が空也お上人様や。
He is introduced as the Buddhist saint Kuya. Kuya was a wandering monk who played a significant role in spreading the practice of Nembutsu and Pure Land Buddhism across Japan. Believing in the vow of Amida Buddha, Kuya dedicated himself to propagating his teachings to the masses in the hopes they will all be reborn into the Pure Land and achieve enlightenment.
極楽浄土を思い描きなさい。地獄、ガキ、畜生、アシュラ、人、天からなる六道輪廻の世界を離れ、大いなる光にあふれた阿弥陀仏の国を思うのです。ナムアミダ仏、ナムアミダ仏。
At the edge of the eastern market, we find a woman in the captivity of two armed men.
私は何もしていない私と違う
They accuse her of stealing money, though the woman denies doing any such thing. As one of the men threatens to kill her, she calls out for help.
そこのお方どうかお助けください
And of course, we oblige.
なんややるんか
The two men flee at the mere sight of our blade.
ありがとうございますこのご恩忘れません
As thanks for helping her, the woman offers to give us shelter and serve as a guide in the capital.
ここは河原の院言うて
She leads us to a place called the Kawara Noin. Once regarded as one of the most luxurious mansions in the city, the estate has fallen into decline following its owner's death. Now that it's vacant, the woman recommends we stay here.
中に入りましょう
The atmosphere is unsettling to say the least.
ここなら夜露もしのげるはず
Just before we can enter the main residence, the door suddenly opens, and from the darkness, the hand of a demon emerges. We immediately unsheath our sword and head inside. But it's too late. The woman is already dead, her body drained of all its blood. Perhaps we should have heeded the words of that old woman and avoided abandoned buildings. Losing a wife at Kawaranoin, a couple from the eastern provinces come to Heian-kyō, where they have arranged to stay at the Kawaranoin. One evening, as they are sitting on a wooden floor, a hand suddenly reaches out from a door behind them and snatches the wife. The neighbors gather and try all means of opening the door, but it won't budge. Finally, they break through with an axe and find the woman hanging from a pole, unwounded, with all her blood sucked out. A group of people dressed in ceremonial attire chant loudly in the distance.
あれは鳥辺野へと向かう葬列。誰ぞ死んだらしいな。
A finely dressed man tells us it's a funeral procession headed for Toribeno, the city's main cemetery. This person in front of us is Ono no Takamura, a prominent Heian period scholar, poet, and court official. Though in legend he was regarded as something far stranger, a man with the ability to move between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. It was said that Takamura would spend a few hours each day in hell, judging the souls of the deceased alongside Enma, the king of the underworld. Takamura asks us if we think a dead person has a soul. Of course, we say no. Once someone dies, the soul leaves the body. He then asks if we know of the hells, and we answer no. It is the one realm we have yet to experience. Takamura then gives us a cryptic response and eerily moves off screen.
哀れじゃのう。
Following the funeral procession, we enter the suburb of Toribeno and find it to be in a very poor state. Several corpses have been dumped on the ground, attracting all sorts of wildlife. Chasing after a snake, we see a familiar face.
なんやあんた、蛇取ってんの邪魔せんといて。
The dried fish vendor from the eastern market, though she now admits that her wares were in fact just the meat of snakes. Near the entrance to the burial ground, we spot a corpse that appears to be relatively fresh. By observing it, we can witness the various stages a decomposing body goes through, as described in the Scroll of 9 Stages. First, the corpse swells up. Second, it is discolored by wind and sun. Third, it disintegrates. Fourth, the flesh stains the earth. Fifth, it rots. Sixth, it is picked at by birds and animals. Seventh, the bones are scattered. Eighth, they are bleached. And ninth, they are burned into earth and ash. The commentary of the scroll notes that reflecting on this process is a means of contemplating impermanence, a way of loosening attachment to one's earthly body. Just next to where the corpse was laid, we notice a strange well. Approaching it, we begin hearing eerie noises that almost sound like the screams of people. Looking into the well, we see horrifying visions of humans being tortured in unspeakable ways. This well is part of the Chinkoji Temple, which is believed to mark the crossroads of the 6 realms. The well itself was said to be an entrance to the underworld, one which Ono no Takamura used to travel between the human realm and hell, a place we will be visiting very soon. We now descend into the lowest of the 6 realms, Naraka, a realm defined by intense, overwhelming suffering, reserved only for the worst of beings. Naraka is divided into 2 major systems, the 8 burning hells, which are driven by violence, hatred, and cruelty, and the 8 freezing hells, where the torture is slower, colder, and more indifferent. The game only showcases the 8 burning hells, so that will be our focus. Each level is worse than the last, with the suffering becoming more intense, prolonged, and inescapable. In East Asian traditions, each level is also thought to have 16 outer chambers, containing different variations of torture, though the in-game encyclopedia only mentions a select few. Starting with the Hell of Constant Revival, the first and least torturous of the 8 burning hells, and the closest to the human world, lying about 8,000 kilometers below it. It is 80,000 kilometers in height, width and breadth, with 16 outer chambers positioned outside the 4 gates of its 4 walls. Those who killed a living creature sometime in the past fall into this hell, where they are tortured to death and then revived over and over again. One day a night here is equivalent to 50 human years, and life lasts for 500 years, it is said. Those who have fallen into this hell constantly encounter hostile fellow sinners and tear at each other with metal claws until their bones are stripped of flesh. Or the demons of this hell beat them from head to toe with iron rods and clubs until they are pulverized like grains of sand. Or else with sharp swords, they slice up their bodies like chefs preparing fish. Then a cool wind arises and returns the sinners to their original state, and the tortures recommence, it is said. The Chamber of Burning Vats, an outer chamber of the Hell of Constant Revival, reserved for those who killed a living being and cooked and ate it sometime in the past. The sinners are put in iron cauldrons and boiled like beans, it is said. The Chamber of Excrement, an outer chamber reserved for those who at one point in the past killed deers or birds. Here there is boiling mud of dung and urine, filled with countless sharp-toothed maggots. The sinners are thrown in and forced to eat the blazing excrement, while the maggots destroy their skin, devour their flesh, and suck the marrow from their bones, it is said. If you're wondering why these descriptions are so detailed, disturbing, and just straight up bizarre, it's because it was done intentionally. If the consequences felt mild, they would not be an effective deterrent. Abstract ideas like karma don't move people much, but being boiled alive or cut apart repeatedly, that creates an instinctual understanding, one strong enough to change behavior. One must also keep in mind that during the Heian era, most people were not literate. Teachings were mainly spread by word of mouth, and so the message had to be both emotionally charged and brutally unforgettable. We now move down into the second layer of the 8 burning hells, the Hell of Black Chains. A hell for those who committed deliberate calculated harm at some point in the past. It is the same size as the Hell of Constant Revival and is located below it. A day and night here are equivalent to 100 human years, and life lasts for 1,000 years. In this hell, all the tortures of the Hell of Constant Revival are inflicted with 10 times the severity. Sinners are laid on burning iron grills, and demons stab them all over with tips of scorching iron spears, then chop them to bits with searing axes, saws, and swords. Or else they are driven among countless hot iron chains, which are wrapped around their bodies by a mighty wind, and sear their flesh and bones to ash. Or else they are made to walk with iron weights along a chain strung between mountains, and if they fall, they tumble into giant vats far below, and are stewed, it is said. The Chamber of Decimation, an outer chamber of the Hell of Black Chains, reserved for those who at some point in the past killed a person, bound a person with ropes, or stole someone's food. Demons chase the sinners and beat them with rods, slash them from behind with swords, and shoot arrows into them, it is said. The Chamber of Endless Screams, an outer chamber reserved for those who at some point in the past preached an untrue sermon based on false ideas, or abandoned everything and drowned themselves. Beneath the steep precipice, they are tied to red-hot iron bars and thrust onto burning coals mixed with countless sharp iron swords, or their bodies are torn to ribbons by dogs with flames spouting from their fangs. The sheer insanity of these tortures never ceases to amaze me, and it's only going to get more horrifying from here, but I think we have endured enough suffering for now. Through the rocky terrain of the underworld, we spot a golden figure illuminating the area around him. It's the Bodhisattva Jizo. Just like the old woman said, he's come to our aid, freeing us from this horrible place. Back in the human realm, a man in purple garments stands outside the entrance to a house.
わしは
三好の清面じゃ。
He introduces himself as Miyoshi no Kiyotsura, a famous scholar who eventually became the head of the Imperial University at Heian-kyō. Kiyotsura tells us that demons have infested this place, and since he is an expert in the yin-yang arts, he has decided to deal with them. We decide to follow along.
ではついてまいれ。
Inside, several faces can be seen lurking in the darkness of the ceiling. Then comes dozens of tiny people charging across the floor. Next comes a woman, concealing the lower half of her face with a fan. Lastly comes an old man, begging that we leave this place alone. I have lived here for a very long time, the man says. Kiyotsura, however, isn't buying his story, identifying him as a demon and banishing him along with all the rest from this abode.
出て行け。
Kiyotsura moves house. Soon after, Miyoshi no Kiyotsura moves into a dilapidated house near Gojo Horikawa. He wakes up at midnight and sees many faces on the ceiling. Next, there are 50 people a foot tall, riding horses through the place. Then comes a pretty woman with fangs and a menacing fox. Kiyotsura sits undisturbed through all this, but when he sees an old man who seems to be the leader, he is convinced he has to leave, and he moves again to a house near the university. The story goes. Two men stand in front of a house, emanating bright flashing lights and ominous sounds. The man in brown says that inside that house lies the body of his dead wife, who happened to be very angry with him at the time of her death. The man in black says that she must have put a curse on him, and that if he doesn't act fast, he will be killed. The two then approach the house and spot the woman's body. The man in black commands the widowed husband to straddle her corpse and hold on to the body no matter how violently it may move. The husband is reluctant at first, but eventually complies. The corpse begins erratically flying around the house. Somehow, the husband manages to stay on. The man in black, who appears to be a yin-yang master, then begins chanting a spell, which seems to break the curse.
もう大丈夫じゃろう。
Ghost of the glowing house. A divorced woman with no relatives dies full of bitter sadness. As the body lies with the hair intact, the house begins to glow with a bluish light. Her former husband hears of it and consults a yin-yang master, who tells him to sit astride the corpse and hold on tightly to the hair, no matter how violently it moves. At midnight, her body comes and finds him. The man manages to stay on the body until dawn and goes on to live a long, healthy life. Inside a place called the Shinsennen, or Divine Spring Garden, a large group of priests chant intensely in tandem. A priest by the name of Kukai then approaches us. Kukai, also known as Kobo Daishi, was among the most influential religious figures in Japanese history. He is the founder of Shingon Buddhism, a form of esoteric Buddhism that underscores enlightenment can be achieved within a single lifetime through the right beliefs and practices.
当時には行かれたか?
After mentioning that we visited the Toji temple, which Kukai happens to lead, he allows us to stay and witness the rain prayer they are about to perform. The sky grows dark, and from the darkness, a large serpentine creature emerges.
これからも修行を積まれよ。良いな。
Zenyo, a story that describes Kukai's rain prayer at the Shinsennen, which was requested by the emperor in order to end a drought. After a 7-day ritual, a snake 1.5 meters long, carrying a golden dragon 15 centimeters high, appears and goes into the pond. The other priests ask Kukai what it means, and he says, "The Dragon King Zenyo, who lives in a pond in India, has arrived. Soon dark clouds appear and it starts to rain. In later years, the ritual always worked to relieve droughts." The loud cries of an infant echo throughout the streets of Heian-kyō. Following the source of the noise, we find two women tugging at the arms of a baby. The women look nearly identical, except for the placement of their mole. Each one claims the other is a fake, and asks that we kill the imposter. We have no idea who to trust, but we must make a choice. If we don't act, the child will almost certainly be ripped apart. We cut down the woman on the left. Looks like we chose wrong. A fox as a nursemaid. A 2-year-old child is playing with his wet nurse at the home of General Minamoto no Masamichi. Suddenly, the child begins to scream very loudly, and the wet nurse also shrieks. Masamichi runs in and finds two identical wet nurses tugging the child back and forth. Assuming that one must be a fox, he draws his sword and runs at them. Then one of the nursemaids vanishes into thin air. The story goes. Outside the Suzaku villa, a heavily armed man has fallen into a deep sleep, leaving himself completely vulnerable to any unsavory individuals who may come his way. At this point, if you haven't acquired the bow from the Eastern Market, you can do so here, but at the cost of your karma. The man also holds a bag that seems to contain some other valuables. Taking it, however, causes him to awaken.
袋はどこへ行った？お主見なんだか？鬼じゃ！鬼に袋を取られた！
Instead of suspecting us, the man rather comically blames the theft on a demon, though this once again speaks to the beliefs of the time.
鬼じゃ！鬼に袋を取られた！
The demon of Suzaku Villa, Rokujoin, the minister of the left, is preparing to go to the Suzaku Villa as part of a roundabout route. He fills a bag with fruit, ties it shut with a string, and asks a servant to take it on ahead. While waiting at the villa, the servant lies down on the bag and takes a nap. When Rokujoin arrives and opens the bag, it is empty. The servant says, "I was on it all the time, so a demon must have taken it," and everyone trembles with fright, the story goes. Two men converse outside an eerie building. They have come to verify a rumor about a flying kimono outside this house, and it turns out to be true.
不思議なことじゃ。
One of them wonders what would happen if they shot the kimono with a bow, and noticing we are carrying one, he asks us to do the honors. Curious ourselves, we decide to give it a go. Our arrow pierces the kimono, and just as it looks like it's about to fall, it attacks.
本当にいるとはのう。つまらぬ巧妙心で命を落としよって。
The ghost of the bishop's manse. Everyone is afraid to go to the bishop's manse, because every evening a red hitoe kimono flies there and climbs up a large hackberry tree. A samurai vows to take care of the problem and lies in wait until the garment flies in. He shoots an arrow. The kimono climbs the tree with the arrow stuck in it, and much blood flows from the hole. The samurai goes home and tells his friends about it, and that night, he dies in his sleep. We are sent back down to hell, this time into the third layer, the hell of mass misery, the third of the 8 burning hells. Those who crushed, oppressed, or inflicted overwhelming harm on others, without regard for their suffering, fall into this hell. It is beneath the hell of black chains and similar in size, but here the tortures are 10 times worse. A day and night here is equivalent to 200 years in the human world, and the lifespan is 2,000 years. Here, all instruments of torture come together to crush sinners to bits. Demons with animal heads chase them between mountains, which close in as giant rocks rain down. They are ground up with iron mortars and pestles, and eaten by demons and ferocious beasts. Or multitudes of writhing sinners are cast into rivers of molten copper. Or else, seeing lovely women atop trees with leaves like swords, they clamber to the top, ripping their flesh to shreds, only to find the women now down below, it is said. The Chamber of Stoic Endurance, an outer chamber of the Hell of Mass Misery, reserved for those who had an affair with someone else's wife or mistress sometime in the past. Sinners are hung head down from trees and grilled by fire from below until their bodies are entirely consumed. Then they are born again, and if the agony makes them scream, the fire enters their mouths and fries every organ in their bodies. The Chamber of Horrors, a chamber reserved for those who force somebody's child to engage in acts of exploitation sometime in the past. Sinners now watch demons torment their own children with iron spears and awls, or drive spikes into them until the anguish of parental love makes them faint away. Then the torment becomes physical, as they are suspended upside down and molten metal is poured inside their bodies, burning their organs to ash before it emerges again. What I find most disturbing about this hell isn't the suffering of the sinners, but that of their children. The child is punished for the sins of the parent, not because they deserve it, but because their suffering is being weaponized as a torment far worse than anything physical. Below the Hell of Mass Misery awaits the fourth layer, the Hell of Wailing, fourth of the 8 burning hells, for those who cause suffering through indulgence, intoxication, or reckless disregard for others. Located below the Hell of Mass Misery and similar in size, a lifetime in this hell is said to be 4,000 years or 400-year days. The sinners here are beaten over the head with iron poles, chased across red-hot metal, and dipped over and over into searing cauldrons. Or they are continuously boiled in vats, put in iron rooms seething with flames, and fed molten copper until every organ is fried, it is said. The Chamber of Fire Clouds, an outer chamber of the Hell of Wailing, reserved for those who at some time in the past forced people to drink liquor and then mocked or shamed them. Here there is a bonfire 100 meters high, where demons roast the sinners until their bodies are entirely melted. When they are removed from the flames, they return to life, and the treatment is repeated without respite for countless months and years, it is said. The Chamber of Plagues, an outer chamber reserved for those who at some time in the past watered down liquor and sold it under false pretense. Here there are 404 different diseases, each one of them powerful enough to kill most people on earth in a single day and night. Furthermore, fiery maggots emerge from the sinners' bodies and relentlessly devour the skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, it is said. 404 diseases for watering down liquor. The disproportion seems absurd, but that's the point. In Buddhist thought, karmic consequence is measured not by the scale of harm, but by the intention behind it. To knowingly deceive, even in something as small as diluting a drink, is a deliberate corruption of trust. After surviving the tortures of this hell, Jizo once again appears, allowing us to return to the human realm. A woman's head peeks at us through the blinds of a window. After noticing her, another woman in yellow exits the building, handing us a gift from our admirer.
これをお取りください。あのお方からでございます。
A flower and a fan with a poem written on it. It reads, I think I need not ask upon whose face my gaze rests. This bright evening face, amid the white blossoms, glistening with evening dew. We are then invited inside and meet the writer of this poem.
歌はお読みいただけましたか?
She asks us to meet her later at the Kawara Noin, which immediately makes us uneasy given what happened to the last woman we went there with. Nevertheless, we make our way there and once again enter this cursed place. Our fair lady is already inside.
本当に来て くださいましたね。お待ちいたしておりました。
She asks us to come closer and then blows the light out. But just as we feared, we are once again not alone.
この女めは私の愛しい人を奪いよった。憎いやつ。
A vengeful ghost appears, remarking how this woman reminds her of the one who stole the man she loved. Then, out of jealousy and hatred, she takes her life.
もう死んでおるわ。
Yugao, the heroine of a chapter in the tale of Genji, is named after the evening face moonflowers blooming on a wall in her house. On his way to see Lady Rokujo, Prince Genji visits his former nursemaid and catches sight of Yugao, who lives next door. Soon he is spending time with her in a deserted villa, but an apparition of a woman, the ghost in life of the jealous Lady Rokujo, appears by their bedside at midnight, and Yugao dies on the spot. The story goes. Loud chanting of the Nembutsu echoes across the street in front of us. It seems to be originating from behind this door. A group of 6 monks sit around another who appears unwell. Despite this, they all passionately chant the Nembutsu without interruption.
ナムアミダ仏、ナムアミダ仏。念仏をやめてはいけません。
The monk leading the ritual tells the old man that he must not stop chanting if he wishes to be reborn into the Pure Land. The man then begins seeing visions of Amida Buddha and then promptly passes away.
私は玄神と申します。
The head monk introduces himself as Genshin. Genshin, also known as Eshin Sozu, was described as a pioneer of Pure Land Buddhism. He wrote extensively, describing the horrors of hell in extreme detail and contrasting them with the peace of the Pure Land. He argued that human beings are too weak and corrupt to reliably attain enlightenment on their own, and should therefore seek refuge in Amida Buddha. One such method is what we just witnessed, a practice Genshin called the Nijugo Zanmai, or the Circle of 25 Meditations, named for the 25 methods said to provide release from the 25 states of unenlightened existence. The ritual is performed at the time of one's death to ensure rebirth into the Pure Land.
ナムアミダ仏。ナムアミダ仏。
An elderly man stands outside the entrance to a house with 2 children.
驚いた。驚かすでない。
He says this is the home of the eminent yin-yang master, Abe no Seimei, whom he has come to visit. Abe no Seimei is without exaggeration the most famous yin-yang practitioner in Japanese history. His tales are legendary and his skill said to be unmatched. Not only did Seimei play a prominent role within the imperial court, but he also served as advisor to multiple emperors of Japan.
静かに。
We enter the residence with the man and his children, and for some reason run into a group of demons. Though they are swiftly dealt with by Seimei.
誰じゃ。人の屋敷に無断で入るとは何者じゃ。
He seems displeased that we entered his home without permission. The elderly man apologizes, saying he only wished to learn the arts of yin and yang from him.
さようでござったか。
Seimei then begins chanting a spell, causing the children to disappear.
お供のわらべをどこへ隠されたのですか。お返しください。
Those 2 children were in fact puppet demons, brought by the old man to test Seimei, but he saw through the illusion immediately.
そのようなことが私に通用するわけがないであろう。けしからん。
Now acknowledging Seimei's skill, the elderly man requests to become his apprentice. The demon puppets are returned, and we are rudely dismissed.
ここはお主のような者がいるところではない。早々に立ち去りなさい。
The shrewdness of Seimei. In one of the tales from Uji, An old priest comes with 2 children to the house of Abe no Seimei to learn yin-yang divination. Thinking he has come to test him, Seimei quietly chants a spell that will hide the children if they are puppet demons, and tells the priest to come back another day. Soon the priest returns and says, "Give me back the children." Seimei says, "You can test other people, but don't try it with me," and chants a spell. The children reappear and the priest is awestruck. The story goes. Blocking the road ahead is a massive group of armed men. They seem to be escorting a finely dressed man, whom we aren't even allowed to approach.
たわけ者、こちらは御堂関白道長様であるぞ。なんと心得る。近寄るでない。
One of his guards identifies him as Grand Minister Michinaga. Fujiwara no Michinaga was regarded as the most powerful political figure of the Heian era and the undisputed ruler of Japan in all but name. Since Michinaga was not of the imperial bloodline, he could never become emperor, though that did not stop his ambition. He married off his daughters to emperors, had his grandsons placed on the throne, and served as regent himself. The emperor ruled only in title. In reality, it was Michinaga who held the reins. His most famous verse captures this supremacy. "This world, I think, is indeed my world. Like the full moon I shine, uncovered by any cloud."
何事じゃ。
Michinaga's dog frantically begins pulling on his clothes and refuses to let go, leading him to summon Abe no Seimei for assistance.
おお、生命。実はこのありさまじゃ。それでは早速。
Seimei begins using divination to determine what's wrong, and discovers that something buried nearby has laid a curse of bad luck upon him. For some reason, we get caught up in this mess and are ordered to dig.
赤者、それはひさげではないか。
We unearthed an artifact with the curse inscribed on it. Given the severity of the spell, Seimei worries that someone is after Michinaga's life, which is hardly surprising given his position.
なんじゃと？
Buried curse. Fujiwara no Michinaga is walking with the dog to Hojoji, but in front of the gate, the dog starts barking and holds him back. Michinaga consults Abe no Seimei, who tells him, "A curse on you is buried there." They dig and find a piece of paper. Seimei folds it into the shape of a bird, says an incantation, and sends it flying. It lands at the house of the yin-yang master who laid the curse, and the state minister who requested it is exiled. Sitting atop a horse in front of the Bridge of Return, we run into a familiar face, Watanabe no Suna.
なんじゃ、お主。
He asks how the sword has been serving us, but our conversation is quickly interrupted by a strange woman. Something feels off. It's that demon from the Rajumon gate. It has come to repay Suna for the wound on its face.
おお、己、またしても出よったか。
Suna pushes the demon back, but at the cost of his blade.
刀が折れよるとは。
To finish the job once and for all, the samurai asks that we return the beard cutter.
おお、かたじけない。
He then plunges the sword deep into the skull of the monster, putting an end to the battle.
かたじけのうござった。
Knowing our journey is not yet over, Suna hands us back the blade and rides off.
心してゆかれよ。ごめん。
Demon Sword. In the tale of the Heike, a beautiful woman hitches a ride on Watanabe no Suna's horse at the Bridge of Return, then turns into a demon and attacks him. With the beard cutter's sword given to him by Minamoto no Yorimitsu, Suna cuts off its arm and it flies away. He then renames the weapon Onikiri, or Demon Cutter. Later, when Suna has locked himself inside his house, at the advice of Abe no Seimei, the demon appears as his stepmother, tricks him into showing the sword, and runs off with it. Not too far from the Bridge of Return, a floating skull appears before us, giggling and chattering its teeth. It leads us down the street and then disappears into the darkness. An old sobbing woman then takes its place, begging that we put out her misery. If we do so, she says, we will be welcomed into the Pure Land, but I don't think that's how it works. Nevertheless, we comply. After the old woman departs, two large demons appear and growl in our face, though they promptly scurry off upon seeing our drawn sword. Lastly, a laughing younger woman faces us. She doesn't attack, but there's clearly something off about her. Cutting her down, a white liquid begins dripping across the floor. Following the trail, we are led into a cave, and inside, encounter a massive arachnid creature. This is a Tsuchigumo, a gigantic shape-shifting spider-like demon that feeds on humans. After briefly observing the creature's movements, we land a fatal blow, splitting its abdomen wide open. From the wound pours a countless number of skulls, perhaps the remains of its victims. Wiping out the Tsuchigumo. In the Book of the Tsuchigumo, Yorimitsu and Suna ride on a flying skull to a ramshackle house. There they meet a host of bizarre ghostly mutations, including an old woman, a young nun, and giant demons. At dawn, a beautiful woman appears, then vanishes when slashed by Yorimitsu's sword. A trail of white blood leads them to the Tsuchigumo, who has been making trouble in the land. They cut off its head and guts, and out come 1,990 skulls, the story goes. Now that we have explored most of the city, it is finally time to make our way to the Imperial. A horde of demons suddenly swarm us. We are surrounded from every direction, too many to count, let alone fight. We once again find ourselves in hell, this time the fifth layer, the hell of greater wailing, a hell reserved for those who spread harmful falsehoods and deliberately deceived others. It sits beneath the hell of wailing, similar in size and structure, but the suffering here is said to be tenfold that of all 4 higher hells and their 16 other chambers combined. One lifetime here is equivalent to 8,000 human lifetimes. In the chamber of stabbing, the mouths and tongues of sinners are pinned together with red-hot iron needles so they can neither cry nor scream. Silence forced upon those who misuse their voice. In the chamber of infinite torment, demons pry out the sinner's tongues with crowbars, only for it to grow back and be torn out again. The eyes receive the same treatment, and what remains of the body is sliced apart with razor-edged swords. Next is the searing hell, the 6th of the 8 burning hells, reserved for those who held wicked thoughts or believed in destructive ideas. It sits beneath the hell of greater wailing and matches it in scale, but its fires burn so intensely that the flames of the higher hells seem like fog or snow by comparison. A single lifetime here spans 16,000 human lifetimes. Sinners are laid on hot iron sheets and beaten and pierced from head to toe with searing pokers, turning their bodies into mincemeat, or they are roasted above giant iron cauldrons until their front and back sides are charred beyond distinction, or else they are pierced from end to end with giant iron skewers and roasted again and again until flames shoot from their bodies. The Chamber of Winds offers no reprieve, reserved for those who believed in false ideas. Sinners here are seized by a tremendous wind and whirled through space until their bodies can no longer be seen. Then a sudden gust of surpassing force pulverizes them entirely, scattering the dust. They are reborn, blown apart, and scattered again, the cycle repeating for ages. Perhaps the most psychologically cruel is the Chamber of Lotus Blossoms, reserved for those who starved themselves in hopes of being reborn in paradise, or those who taught others this false practice. While their own bodies blaze with flame, sinners hear their companions speak of cool water and shade nearby. They run toward it, only to plunge into bonfire pits and burn to a crisp. Revived, they eventually find a pond, but it brims with flaming white lotus blossoms that sear them anew, it is said. The lotus is usually a symbol of enlightenment and purity in Buddhism. Here, it's been twisted into an instrument of cruelty. I think we've suffered enough for now. We now begin our journey to the final area of the game, the Imperial Palace, a walled-off complex where the Emperor, his family, and only the highest-ranking court officials resided. On our way there, we encounter a strange man coughing in the middle of the street. He asks if we know who he is, to which we answer no, but he clearly must be someone important. As he introduces himself, his face turns pale blue, like that of a demon. His name is Tomono Yoshio, a former high-ranking court official who was exiled from Heian-kyō after being implicated in a plot to burn down one of the main gates of the Imperial Palace. He was thought to have died in exile, but here he is. Yoshio tells us that following his death, he became the god of plagues, and that a deadly epidemic was supposed to be inflicted upon the capital, but he changed it to a coughing sickness instead. An oddly merciful act, given what he was accused of. The god of epidemics, at a time where a severe coughing sickness was sweeping the country, the cook in a certain mansion met a dignified yet fearsome man. The cook bowed before him, and he said, "I am High Counselor Tomono Yoshio. Long ago I was exiled, and when I died, I became the god of epidemics. But I am indebted to the Imperial Court, and so this year I have changed an epidemic which was supposed to kill everyone into a coughing sickness." Yoshio then disappears. Nearing the Imperial Palace, we notice several dense dark clouds swiftly moving in its direction, and within the clouds is what appears to be a gigantic, almost incomprehensible beast, a beast we will soon encounter. Outside the Suzakumon, the south gate of the Imperial Palace, a shady man approaches us. He asks if we like gambling. We say no, but the man insists, claiming we will be rewarded with something very nice if we win. Tempted, we unwisely agree, and the man jumps to the second story of the building behind him, inviting us to play a game of Sugoroku, the ancient Japanese version of pachisi, similar to modern backgammon. The aim is to move all your pieces to the opponent's side. The black pieces are ours, the white his. To move our pieces, we roll 2 dice, and then have the option to split the roll across multiple pieces, or combine it into one. The game is long and drawn out, but eventually, we come out on top. Our opponent is frustrated and immediately throws us out. Our prize, apparently, is this woman, but we are instructed not to touch her for 100 days. It seems rather suspicious, and we aren't given much of an explanation. The woman as well seems almost lifeless. Disregarding the warning, we tap her shoulder. The man laughs maniacally from inside the building, exclaiming that this so-called woman was created from the body of a dead person, and that after 100 days, she would have become real. Sugoroku Showdown. In the Book of Haseo, a man challenges the Sugoroku expert, Ki no Haseo, to a showdown. He bets a beautiful woman, and Haseo bets his fortune, and they start playing on top of the Suzaku Gate. Haseo wins game after game. Finally, in his fervor and frustration, the man takes on the form of a demon. The next day, the demon delivers a beautiful woman and says she must not be touched for 100 days. Haseo loses control after 80 days, and when he embraces her, she instantly turns to water and flows away, the story goes. We unfortunately cannot enter the Imperial Palace from the Suzaku Gate, nor from any of the other formal entrances.
ここから中へは身分の低い者は入れない。戻れ。
We'll have to find a less conspicuous way in.
おい、そこの男、ここは通ってはならん。いやー、怪しいやつめ。
怪しいやつめ。
After dispatching 3 guards in our path, we reach the Upper East Tsuchimikado, or Earthen Gate. Unlike the others, this one is simply a gap in the wall, used for the transport of goods, but more importantly, it's currently unguarded. We have now officially entered the Imperial Palace, though the main point of interest is the residential area. To reach it, we must first pass through the Otage Pinefield, an eerie forest said to be haunted by demons. A woman in a blue dress moves swiftly through the trees, hiding the lower half of her face behind a fan. To our surprise, she looks rather normal, but what happens next is even less expected. The woman transforms into a fox, urinates on us, and then bolts into the night. The Fox of Utage. Going home across the Utage Pinefield on a moonlit autumn night, Harima no Yasutaka meets a pretty maiden who hides her face with a fan. After walking and chatting with her for a while, he begins to suspect she is the famous Fox of Utage, and he draws his sword as a test. In response, she sprays him with smelly urine. Surprised, he lowers his sword, and she turns into a fox, yelps, and runs away, the story goes. Emerging from the forest, we look south and see the Oten Gate engulfed in flames, a reenactment of one of the greatest scandals of the Heian period.
おお、いよ燃えておるの。大天門が燃えておる。
Tomo no Yoshio once again makes an appearance, reflecting bitterly on what transpired.
わしが伊豆の国に流されたのはあのせいじゃ。
He seems to allude to the idea that it was not him who set the fire, but rather the Fujiwara clan who framed him for the incident. And while they certainly had both the motive and means to do so, the prevailing historical account attributes the arson to Yoshio, though it still remains a topic of contention till this day. Trying to enter the imperial residences, we are denied entry, but surprisingly not thrown out immediately. Perhaps we were mistaken for a low-ranking noble. Either way, we won't be able to enter like this. Nearby the Otage forest, a demon has killed a palace official and is now about to devour his corpse. It takes note of us and attacks, but by quickly chanting the sutra from our scroll, we are able to vanquish it. We are now able to loot the palace officials' clothes and use them as a disguise to enter the imperial residences. As expected, the place is a sight to behold. The buildings are elegantly designed, and the grounds are meticulously kept. It's in stark contrast to the rest of the city. Passing through the Shishinden, the palace of the Purple Sanctum, we meet the 50th Emperor of Japan, the man who founded the Heian era and established Heian-kyō as the country's capital, Emperor Kamu.
見事であろう。見事な都であろう。
Kamu revels in the glory of the capital he has created, but then grows paranoid as he mentions Prince Sawara's curse.
恐ろしいことなどない。恐ろしくない。
Prince Sawara was the younger brother of Kamu and original heir to the throne. However, after being accused of involvement in the assassination of a court official, he was exiled from the former capital, Nagaoka-kyo. Sawara denied the charges outright and began fasting as a proclamation of his innocence, eventually passing away from malnutrition. Following his death, A series of misfortunes would follow. Widespread illness and instability, natural disasters, and multiple deaths within the imperial family, including Kamu's wife, mother, and daughter. Kamu was so fearful that his brother had laid a curse upon him that he ended up abandoning the former capital entirely and moved to Heian-kyō. There he would clear Sawara's name and absolve him of all guilt, though we will never know the truth of the matter, nor whether Emperor Kamu had a hand in framing his own brother to seize the throne. To the left of the imperial throne, we once again see black clouds forming, this time accompanied by thunder and lightning. The flying beast from earlier emerges, and this time it is ready to fight. Nue the Chimera, a mythical beast with a monkey's head, a snake for a tail, the torso of a badger, 4 tiger's legs, and the call of a bird. It rapidly flies around the room, waiting for the right moment to strike. We have to best it before then. We pull out our bow, carefully take aim, and pierce the creature with a single well-placed arrow. After defeating the Nue, a secret passage opens up in the room adjacent. It leads us into the Sekiro Den, the daily living area of the Emperor, where various affairs of state were conducted. Following the path before us, we stumble into a meeting between court nobles discussing a drought. They are taken aback by our presence, but even more so by what happens next. Thunderbolt. In 930, on the 26th day of the 6th month, during the hour of the horse, rumbling was heard from a black cloud covering Mount Itago, and suddenly a thunderbolt struck a pillar of the Sekiro Den. Court nobles were there discussing measures to counter a drought. One died instantly as the bolt rent his chest, another's face was scorched. In the Shishin Den, there were burnt knees, a death from hair of fire, and a death from madness. Everyone thought it was the work of Sugawara no Michizane's vengeful ghost. Sugawara no Michizane was a brilliant scholar, poet, and high-ranking court official who served the 59th and 60th emperors. However, after being politically slandered by his rivals, he was stripped of his rank and exiled. Michizane is said to have died full of grief and resentment, and following the incident where lightning struck the palace, as well as a host of other disasters, many believed he had become a vengeful spirit, much like Prince Sawara before him. It's a pattern that recurs throughout the Heian period. The wrongfully exiled dying in anguish, then returning as supernatural forces of retribution. A shadowy figure moves in the darkness past the carnage and slips into the room beyond a red door. Inside, we find Daigo, the 60th Emperor of Japan, one of the last emperors to hold real power before the Fujiwara clan took control.
そちは何者じゃ？地獄からの使いか？
While generally considered a competent leader, his reign was largely overshadowed by the exile of Sugawara no Michizane and the disasters that followed.
このようなことになったのは道真のたたりであろう。
His decision to dismiss Michizane would haunt him for the rest of his life, and following the Thunderbolt incident, he resigned from the throne and died just a few months later.
道真。
The ceiling of the palace caves in, crushing our body and sending us to hell along with Daigo. We will now experience the wicked tortures of the lowest 2 levels of hell, starting with the greatest searing hell, the 7th of the 8 burning hells, for those who committed extremely grave acts, especially violations against the Buddhist order or sacred persons sometime in the past. Below the searing hell, with the same size and sorts of tortures, but with 10 times the suffering of all 6 higher hells combined. A lifetime here is half an eternity. The chamber of every agony, an outer chamber of the greatest searing hell, reserved for those who as ordained Buddhist priests, served liquor to women who are upholding the teachings, tricked them into indecent acts, and gave them money or gifts. The sinners' skins are peeled off by flaming swords, which leave the flesh intact. Then their bodies and skins are fried on a searing griddle, and molten iron is poured on them. Intense cumulative tortures are applied for eons, it is said. finally, we fall into the interminable hell, the eighth and lowest of the burning hells, for those who have committed the most extreme of acts, such as denying moral causality, slandering the Buddha's teachings, or carrying out acts of profound and sustained cruelty. It is 640,000 kilometers square. A lifetime is almost an eternity, and the tortures are 1,000 times worse than those of the 7 higher hells and their outer chambers combined. The hell is entirely filled with flames, a stench that would suffocate the human world, and screams of agony, it is said. Sinners hang upside down for 2,000 years, listening to the screams of others in hell. Then raging fires singe off their skin and flesh, and burn through to the marrow of their bones. Or they are sent forever back and forth across searing fields and red-hot iron mountains. Or else their mouths are pried open with crowbars, and fed hot iron balls would sear away the throat and every bodily organ. The intensity of the flames fuse all sinners into a single mass, and there is never any respite, it is said. The chamber of the bird monster, an outer chamber of the interminable hell, for those who once dammed a river used by others, or caused someone to die of thirst. A bird the size of an elephant, with a sharp beak shooting flames, carries the sinners off and drops them from high in the sky, smashing them to bits. They are then promptly reborn and again carried off by the bird. The Chamber of Crashing Mountains, an outer chamber reserved for those who in the past snatched food from someone who had taken vows and was training to reach Buddhahood and did not give it away. Mountains 8 kilometers high and wide tumble down and crush the sinners. After crushing, they are reborn, and after rebirth, they are crushed. This is the end, the very bottom of the underworld. There is nothing beneath it, no further depth to fall to, just endless absolute torment, stretching out for a near eternity. After suffering for an incalculable amount of time, alongside Emperor Daigo, the Buddhist monk Nichizo appears, riding atop a white cloud.
ああ、なんとおいたわしい。このような苦しい思いをなさっておられましたか。
ああ、そなたは。
日蔵でございます。あなた様を地獄から連れ戻しに参りました。
Journey in the darkness. While keeping silence and fasting in ascetic training, Nichizo died for 13 days and was led by the Bodhisattva Zao through the 6 realms, including the dark worlds of the dead. In one hell, in a group crouched on red-hot coals crying and screaming, he sees Emperor Daigo, who gives him a message for the Emperor in the world of the living. Before leaving, Nichizo seems to recognize us.
そちらはどこかで一度お会いしたことがありますね。
He remarks with disappointment that we would not have been reborn here if we had only taken our Buddhist practices more seriously. Nonetheless, he takes pity on us and offers to return us to the human realm along with Daigo.
わかりました。それではこれから淡い青い光を目指してください。そこが人の世への出口です。
We return to the human realm, but this time not where we were killed. We appear to be in the suburb of Toribeno, the main cemetery of Heian-kyō. Perhaps we escaped through the well of the Chinkoji temple. Nearby, we spot another familiar face, the Buddhist saint Kuya, whom we met at the Eastern Market.
Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu.
He is once again chanting the Nembutsu, this time beside a deer that has been killed.
いかなる生き物生類であっても、怯えているものでも、凶暴なものでも、ことごとく長いものでも、目に見えるものでも、見えないものでも、遠くに住むものでも、近くに住むものでも、すでに生まれたものでも、これから生まれようと欲するものでも、一切の生きとし生けるものは幸せであれ。もろもろの欲望に関する貪りを除いた人は 決して再び母体に宿ることがないであろう。ナムアミダ仏。ナムアミダ仏。
After traveling all throughout Heian-kyō, encountering all kinds of people and beings, witnessing the consequences of karma, and passing through all 6 realms, we chant the Nembutsu one final time, entrusting ourselves to Amida Buddha. Namu Amida Butsu. The screen fades to white, and the game ends. Perhaps the next time we die, we will awaken in the Pure Land.